Before we begin, pause for a quick self-check. Bring to mind one recent synchronicity you've noticed, a repeated number, a sudden coincidence, or something that felt too exact to dismiss. Hold it there. In a moment, I'll explain why that matters. The reason this video appeared for you has little to do with algorithms and everything to do with resonance. In some interpretations of quantum consciousness interaction, your awareness is already beginning to phase lock with a new timeline. By the end, you'll know the most counterintuitive move to secure your breakthrough and a 60-second practice to stabilize it. But here's the paradox. This is also the stage where people unconsciously push their dreams away. I'll show you how that happens and the practice that prevents it. And once you see the pattern, you'll start to understand why this moment found you now. Why you're seeing this transmission right now has less to do with chance and more to do with timing. On the surface, it may look like an algorithm suggestion, one among hundreds you scroll past. But for many people, encounters like this often feel different. It may feel less like noise and more like choice, as if the moment itself had been calibrated for you to pause and engage. That's not about destiny written in stone, but about how resonance works in human attention and experience. Think of resonance in the simplest way. When one note is struck, another of the same frequency begins to vibrate. The second note wasn't forced, it was ready and waiting for the match. In much the same way, certain messages stand out because your inner state is already primed to recognize them. The video was always here, but now the conditions within you allow it to register as meaningful. That's what gives this moment its weight. If you're wondering whether this signal applies to you, use it as a quick self-check. Ask yourself if one or more of these signs have surfaced recently. First, has your focus sharpened, making you notice details or insights you would have overlooked before? Second, have you been seeing repeating patterns, numbers, deja vu moments, or odd alignments that feel more like echoes than coincidences? Third, have new opportunities started showing up, or have old ones closed in ways that force you to pivot? Each of these markers suggests that your inner field is reorganizing, and the resonance you feel now is part of that shift. This isn't about believing that an unseen system chose you while others were passed over. It's about recognizing that the act of noticing is itself meaningful. Many scroll past without pause. But if you've landed here with attention intact, that attention says something about where you are in your process. Resonant pull isn't an external stamp of approval. It's an internal indicator that transition is underway. That transition often carries conflicting impressions. On one hand, it can feel magnetic, like being pulled toward a current larger than you. On the other, it can feel unsteady, almost like the ground beneath your plans is sliding. Excitement and disorientation frequently sit side by side during this stage. They're both signs of old patterns dissolving while new structures attempt to stabilize. So when you consider why this moment has reached you, understand it as both signal and confirmation. What appears like stillness or even randomness is better viewed as alignment beginning to show itself in subtle ways. From this angle, the timing is part of the pattern, evidence that your awareness is brushing against a threshold where potential begins preparing to take form. And that threshold leads directly into the deeper question of what happens when infinite possibilities begin narrowing into reality itself. This stage is known as the collapse point, the threshold where infinite paths begin to crystallize into a lived reality. In common quantum metaphors and some interpretations of measurement theory, particles exist in superposition, holding all possible states, until they are observed, at which time one outcome becomes definite. As a working model for consciousness, This collapse point represents the passage where everything you've imagined hovers in readiness, awaiting the moment conditions align enough for one version to take form. Your desires function much the same way. They exist as possible states, woven but unresolved. You've pictured them, replayed them in your mind, maybe even rehearsed them so vividly it felt more real than your daily routine. Still, like any unfixed particle, they remain in suspension until the right calibration occurs. The absence of visible progress is misleading. What looks like nothing is happening is often the gestation period, where unseen structures gather themselves quietly before release. This stage often feels like silence. Instead of confirmation, there is stillness. Instead of visible momentum, there is space. Many misinterpret this as evidence of failure, closing their expectations when in fact the field is in motion beneath the surface. A more useful metaphor is the seed in soil. From above, only dirt shows. Yet beneath, roots are forming, directions are being set, and the unseen blueprint is preparing to emerge. That quiet void is not lifeless. It is an incubation chamber where reality prepares itself to become tangible. Some interpretations suggest that observation correlates with collapse. As a practical model, your sustained attention functions like that observational force. The energy you continually return to, your mental imagery, your expectation, the tone of your focus, gradually stabilizes one thread among many. What you hold internally does not push reality into place through brute insistence. Rather, it provides a consistent field sturdy enough for one version to solidify. This is why timing feels stretched. The match between focus and external conditions must synchronize before it can hold together. To work with this stage, add a brief calibration ritual whenever anxiety pushes in. 1 minute is enough. Take 3 slow breaths into your diaphragm. For 10 seconds, let yourself feel, not just imagine, the outcome as though it already breathes in your life. Then, declare inwardly, I am ready to receive in perfect timing. This tiny pattern breaks the reflex to tighten control, replacing it with alignment. Instead of forcing collapse, you allow it. The quiet before breakthrough is often mistaken for emptiness, but it is actually preparation. Missteps happen when we demand evidence before the process has completed its alignment. When you recognize it as calibration, the pause becomes easier to hold. And it is in these pauses that the first subtle indicators begin to emerge, the odd nudges, the repeating number you catch twice in a day, the conversation that feels too aligned to be random. This next stage brings us directly into the science of phase locking with desired timelines. Phase locking describes what happens when two oscillating systems, initially out of rhythm, gradually synchronize into the same beat. One system influences the other until they stabilize, moving as one. And just as pendulums on the same beam, sound waves, or even heartbeats can align, your consciousness can fall into rhythm with the timeline that holds your desired future. Every intention you cultivate operates like a pulse within the field. It radiates with its own rhythm, waiting for the inner state that resonates closely enough to bond with it. In the beginning, this connection is unstable. You feel drawn in one moment, uncertain the next. Over time, as you consistently return to that inner signal, the two rhythms move closer together until synchronization begins. When this occurs, external hints often cluster, not as proof to chase, but as indications that resonance is forming between you and the reality you want. This alignment process isn't without turbulence. Old frequencies, patterns of thought, behavior, and attachment tied to earlier versions of you tend to resist change. That resistance may create friction in your outer life. Plans suddenly fall apart, unexpected tension with others arises, or daily routines slip into disarray. While uncomfortable, these disturbances often signal that the older structures are straining against a rhythm they can no longer maintain. Rather than interpreting chaos as failure, it can be recognized as evidence that reorganization is in motion. As phase locking deepens, certain signs surface that you can use as a quick mental checklist. Do repeated numbers keep finding you at odd moments? Has deja vu brought a strange sense you've rehearsed a scene before living it? Have long-buried memories returned with clarity, inviting you to let go of outdated paths? These are not random glitches. They are markers that your inner frequency is being tuned toward the outcome you've been holding. The key to stabilizing this process is what's known as coherence, consistent internal alignment between thought, feeling, and action. Coherence is the state that allows the two rhythms to fully match. Instead of longing for what you don't have, coherence shifts your energy so that your desire feels embodied, lived, and present. In this stage, the separation between wanting energy and receiving energy dissolves, leaving you resonant with the version of life you've been seeking. A practical way to strengthen coherence is a brief frequency match exercise each day. In the first few minutes of your morning, spend 60 seconds stepping into the expanded version of yourself. Feel into the emotions and posture of already embodying it. Then, through the day, choose one small micro-action that reflects that state. Each tiny choice imprints the rhythm more firmly, just as repeated swings bring pendulums into unity. Phase locking, then, is both science and practice, an interplay between resonance, resistance, and consistency. And yet, just when the harmony is at its most delicate, many people encounter a sudden quiet, an apparent void that feels like nothing is happening. It is here where the next challenge arises. Surrendering to the void without resistance means learning to trust when everything appears silent. That silence can feel like absence, but in reality, it is a preparation chamber where unseen structures are forming. What seems like stillness is concentration, potential gathering itself into alignment before it becomes tangible. The urge to control naturally rises here. The mind craves signals, demands reassurance, and panics when no evidence arrives. But this grasping doesn't stabilize the process, it disrupts it. Checking for proof too often creates premature decoherence. Think of it as collapsing possibility into limitation before the larger pattern can lock in. The invitation is to notice when fear pushes you to reach outward and instead return inward. When you feel that impulse, pause. Take 3 slow breaths. Let your body lean into the feeling of readiness. This simple practice preserves coherence more effectively than repeated searching ever could. At this threshold, only 2 postures exist: force or release. Force looks like planning excessively, chasing confirmation, or refreshing outcomes that have yet to arrive. Release looks like choosing space, trust, and allowing. And while force fragments energy, release strengthens it into coherence. Release does not mean apathy. It is an active state of trust, a willingness to let the field organize reality without constant interference. Nature already reveals this dynamic. A caterpillar does not resist its cocoon or demand external proof of becoming. Inside, its entire form dissolves, a process invisible to the outside world. To external eyes, the chamber seems inactive. Yet this is the most critical stage, one where surrender makes transformation inevitable. You are asked for the same willingness, to let the unseen reorganize you without distraction. Practical support helps anchor this posture of release. Stillness exercises, simply sitting without goal or agenda, train the nervous system to feel safe in empty space. Breathwork that focuses purely on sensation draws attention inward and calms the reflex to grasp. Gratitude journaling for outcomes not yet visible strengthens coherence, teaching your body to treat what has not yet arrived as already lived. Each of these small practices shifts energy from seeking proof to inhabiting readiness. The void becomes less frightening when you treat it as the field stabilizing your transition. Instead of absence, you start to sense movement hidden from view. Instead of panic at the lack of signs, you learn to rest into trust that the structure is holding. These practices keep the alignment long enough for manifestation to lock into place. And once surrender becomes steady, another phase begins. The moment when the familiar reality you've lived starts dissolving while the expanded version of you starts coming into form. Navigating the passage into the next reality requires learning how to move through transition without losing coherence. At this stage, reality often feels unstable. Time can stretch unbearably long or collapse into days that pass unnoticed. Old roles and patterns slip away, while impulses from a larger version of yourself begin to push forward. Disorientation and acceleration mix together here, and the practical challenge is to remain steady while deliberately choosing the identity you want to stabilize. A useful way to approach this passage is to remember that each thought and action becomes a vote. Each decision is not just about the surface outcome, but about which self you are reinforcing. Instead of trying to manage all the uncertainty, the research points to a simple guiding tool. At every turning point, ask yourself, what would the version of me who already lives this reality do right now? Acting on the first impulse that arises reduces hesitation and keeps you aligned with that expanded identity, even when circumstances feel chaotic. External signs often confirm that this stage is underway. Opportunities appear suddenly, demanding a decision before you feel fully prepared. Endings arrive that clear space, whether through relationships shifting, jobs completing, or environments reorganizing themselves. These disruptions signal more than change. They indicate that the field is recalibrating. What looks like collapse is often room being made for coherence to lock in. Alongside these external shifts, a sense of inner clarity becomes sharper. You begin to notice which dynamics are finished, as though highlighted so you can release them. To meet this stage with stability, identity rehearsal is one of the most direct practices available. Spend 1 to 3 minutes each morning stepping into the energy of the self who already embodies your desired future. Notice your posture, tone, and decisions through the lens of that version. Then select one micro-choice during your day that expresses this identity in action. Carrying a new tone in conversation, making a slightly bolder decision, or shifting how you expect outcomes. These are small moves that strengthen coherence in your system. Over time, repeated practice shapes the nervous system itself. Neuroscience shows that these consistent embodied rehearsals create new neural pathways, neuroplasticity in action, supporting the transition into your chosen timeline. Every micro-choice matters because each one reinforces your sense of self. With repetition, you stop waiting for the new reality and begin living it in increments. This reframes breakthrough from being a single event into a continuous state of embodiment. The external field responds not to abstract hope, but to the identity you consistently anchor through thought, feeling, and action. The art of navigating the passage is learning to stay centered in turbulence, embodying the expanded version of yourself even when evidence has not yet fully caught up. It is in this steady coherence that the outer world organizes into alignment with your choice of reality. And from this point, the deeper lesson becomes clear. Transformation is not about grasping for control, but about maintaining coherence long enough for the field to meet you where you stand. And so we arrive at the heart of it, the conclusion of this passage. What matters now is how you carry this forward in daily practice. The process is not abstract. It rests on small, consistent actions that stabilize the frequency you've chosen. 3 steps ground this transition. Spend 1 to 3 minutes each morning in identity rehearsal. Breathe slowly 3 times whenever fear urges you to check for proof, and make 1 micro-choice each day that aligns with your expanded self. Together, these embed the future into your present rhythm. To anchor this now, comment the phrase, "I am ready to receive what's already mine." Feel it as you type, letting the act shift you from wanting into receiving. If this message landed, re-watch tomorrow morning to reinforce the pattern, and consider liking and subscribing to remain aligned with the shared field. The only remaining step is to hold the frequency of the you who already receives.